Hello and welcome to Talk Truth. My name is Cory Huntsberger. I have my father, Alan Huntsberger, in the studio. We're going to start off with some foundational verse because we need it. We need to ground us somehow, somewhere in this crazy world. The earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants, that includes the woods and your home, belong to the Lord, for he laid its foundation on the seas and established it on the rivers. Psalm 24, 1 and 2. Dad, we definitely need some kind of foundation because there's so much going on in Canada right now. It's absolutely crazy. Feels like we're watching a circus. And we need something to ground us. And that's why you and I have been saying this verse for the last 4 years. It kind of grounds us from, okay, we're going to start here. Now let's have the conversation, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because the earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants, does belong to the Lord. And it's something that we need to keep in mind always. I wanted to bring this up. One of the things that I think is very important is that when we look at the Lord and all that he has for us, it's interesting that we need to realize that he is in control of our planet. And nothing goes by him. He planned it from the end to the beginning. And the reason why is we just need to stand up for what is freedom. And what is freedom? Freedom is choice and truth. Freedom is not lockdowns. Freedom is not, we're going to cancel your concert. Freedom is not not letting you do it because we don't agree with it. You see, the interesting thing about the LGBTQ thing is that, if that's the way they want to live and that's the way they want to believe, then it's their choice. But they seem to think that everybody else has to believe the same thing. No, we don't have to believe the same thing. And it doesn't mean that means we don't like you or that we don't love you. It's just we don't have to believe the same thing. In Christianity, we believe that Jesus died on the cross and on the third day rose again, and that if you receive him as your Lord and Savior, you'll be saved. Now, you don't have to believe that. We're not going to mandate that you force you to believe that. It's your choice. Choose you this day what you will serve. And for some reason in Canada, we've got this idea that you have to, lockstep. It's kind of like a lockstep thing. I think I'm saying lockstep right. It's kind of like you have to do what we want you to do, or you have to believe what we want you to believe. And if you don't do or believe what we want you to believe, we're going to shut you out. We're going to stop you. We're going to get rid of you. No. That's not freedom. And I'm sorry, as long as, I have breath, I'm going to say that God is the one that gives true freedom. And that's the beautiful thing of what this verse is all about.
Yeah, the community that you mentioned, they don't even agree with each other. It's so ridiculous that everyone has to agree. Anyway, well, you know what? That's why we have the show. We have the show to have conversation, hear all the other sides. Someone who's also investigating and listening to other people's sides is this guy right here, Cory Morgan. He's with the Western Standard. Cory, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thanks. Thrilled to join you guys again.
Well, we appreciate you coming because we read what you write and we even watch your videos. I know you host your own show too. We've really enjoyed the conversations you've been having. There are so many to have right now in Canada because it's hard to pick which craziness do you want to focus on because there's just so much crazy. But I think one of the things that Alan really, and you mentioned it a little bit, Alan, had to do with taking away certain people's rights to have a Christian concert or to do worship, right, Dad?
Right, and that's what this whole Sean Foyt thing that has gone across Canada is really what it represents. And you guys wrote a beautiful editorial, and understand, Cory, that you're on the editorial board. It was entitled Prairie Backbone, Saskatchewan, Alberta says yes to freedom. Rest of Canada says no. And that's exactly what happened. They all shut him down and won't allow him to have his gospel concerts either out at a park or even in a church without getting fined. And yet, Alberta, in fact, the premier said you can have your concert at the legislature grounds, and you're more than free, to do that as long as all the rules and regulations of decency and safety and all that kind of thing are followed. And I appreciate what you folks read. In fact, I want to just read the last two paragraphs, and then you can comment, Cory. You said, the editorial said, Saskatchewan and Alberta just gave Canada a civics lesson. They didn't endorse a message, they enforced a principle. They didn't duck, they planned. They didn't hide faith, they accommodated it in public where it belongs in a free society. Meanwhile, other governments chose optics over obligation. Here's the bottom line. If Canada can't or won't defend basic freedoms for people it finds unfashionable, the prairies will keep looking for more control over their own affairs. More autonomy today, maybe independence tomorrow. That's not bluster. It's the predictable outcome where two provinces carry the charter while the rest keep trying to drop it. Excellent, my friend.
Yeah, thanks. And it's sad that 8 out of 10 provinces can't understand that basic principle of freedoms and accommodating differences of view and using those spaces. I mean, that being in our editorial board, the piece we put out, really, I think demonstrated that we value diversity of view among our board. We have, Nigel Hannaford, a man of very strong faith and outspoken, and myself, very secular, but we both agree very strongly on accommodating and protecting those freedoms, even if we differ on what's being displayed at those freedoms. It seems that it should be a simple principle. I mean, we could get together and put out an editorial where we strongly agree on that, yet our provincial leaders across the country can't support this kind of fundamental freedom. It's frustrating. It's scary, I think, in a lot of ways. And yes, it shows how the prairie provinces really are incrementally breaking away from the rest of the country in some fundamental ways, and may lead to a full independence situation soon.
Our history in Canada, though, was basically from sea to sea. He would have dominion. I mean, we started off as a Christian nation. Every province that was involved in the Dominion of Canada was free. I mean, freedom of expression was a part of it. And there's just been this erosion of freedom, partly because I think of what has happened in the media. The media, is scaring people to death. My wife talked to a person the other day who said that people are scared to go across the border because they're going to search your phones and see if you have anything in your phone about Donald Trump. I mean, it's like, really? No, that's crazy. But, when we went down to Billings, Montana, the border was empty. Like, this is the middle of summer in the holidays. Going down to the States, it was empty. Coming back from the States, it was empty. I've never seen anything that strange before in my life. And so there's a fear that people have been told about or something about that is keeping people from enjoying the United States as well as enjoying Canada.
Yeah, the media is taking on a dangerously activist role, and they're trying to create and model the news rather than report on it as their mandate was supposed to be initially. They really want, and that's costing all of us, they want to actually increase the division between Canada and the United States. I mean, there is a trade war going on. There is a problem and a challenge happening. But when they keep feeding a narrative as if there's actually hostility south of the border, or that the border crossings are being rougher on Canadians than they used to be, well, now they're actually causing the issue. They're causing damage, and that's a bad trend, and it should be called out. I appreciate you guys mentioning it, because this goes by your average citizen who hasn't crossed the border. They take the news as something they feel they should trust or believe, and from speaking to anybody who's crossed the border, they haven't seen anything like that. My mother's American. She lives in northern Idaho, crosses the border very regularly. There's been no differences or anything like that. And it's shameful that the media would portray it as such. Driving a wedge between our closest ally, friends, and neighbors like that for the sake, I think, of, well, actually, feeding a campaign basis of the federal government.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cory, I got to play you this clip because speaking of the other media, you're in media. So it's like, I just see this clip, just such a far reach, so pathetic. I want to get your viewpoints on it. Watch this. This is just, when I saw it, I was like, I got to save this. I can't even believe they even did this. Watch this. This is so weak in my opinion.
Canada is taking part as we speak this morning in talks aimed at building on developments from that extraordinary White House summit aimed at ending Russia's war on Ukraine. We have some new images of Prime Minister Mark Carney from that conversation this morning, frame grabs from the virtual meeting that was co-chaired by UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron. You can make out the Prime Minister there in the lower part of the screen. The focus for the meeting this morning, security guarantees for Ukraine. And we will be watching for an official statement from the Prime Minister's office as to anything that has come from that meeting later today.
Cory, I had to play that. Nobody could see you. I could see your reaction while that was playing. You were laughing because you see what I see in that clip. How weak do you have to be? How much does the government have to pay your media platform to be so desperate to talk about a meeting that he wasn't even invited to, and yet zoom in on a little corner, a piece of a corner of him on a Zoom call? I mean, what are your thoughts on that clip? I mean, it just blows my mind.
If you squint hard enough, you might see him down there. This is the state broadcaster at its best. And I mean, going so far out of their way to polish a situation where the Prime Minister was just completely irrelevant in those meetings whatsoever. It's terrible. If anything, they should be reporting on why is the Prime Minister so irrelevant on a meeting of such importance, or why aren't we a part of it, rather than pretending that something was going on. It reminds me of, I believe it was held, by alternative political parties when they aren't allowed into the main debates. So they hold a little side YouTube debate of their own during the nights that the main debates are going on that nobody actually watches. This is kind of what the CBC did and tried to host. Nobody cares what Carney was doing off to the side with other people who weren't participants in that summit. Yet, wow, yeah, that was a beautiful clip just to really show how far that state-funded broadcaster will go to keep the narrative on behalf of the government. They are no longer a public broadcaster. That's the indications of a true state broadcaster. Their role now as Pravda is to represent the government, not to be a publicly funded one that's supposed to be covering all news.
Yeah, agreed. And speaking of narratives, I know that, and I want you to talk a little bit about what you got a show coming up, and you're going to be talking. There's been new findings that bring the total number of unmarked graves claimed at the site to 81. To date, no actual, bodies have been brought forth to prove their claim. Can we talk a little bit about that? Again, there's this narrative out there that it's a horrible story, you know what I mean? And it's just horrific. And I think a lot of people are like, that's unacceptable. But we'd like to see some evidence. They haven't brought forth any evidence. And that's where like my brain goes, wait a minute, almost like that clip. It's like, it's so weird. There's this narrative being pushed. I don't mind the narrative if it's true, but it's like, there's no concrete evidence, no proof of anything. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on this and what's your show going to be about.
Sure, and that ties in a little, and I'm afraid I don't have the notes handy with the name of the CBC reporter who posted that on X. It was Alana something, so if people want to look it up. But she posted that bodies had been found, bringing the body count to 81 graves on this reserve. And she got so roasted so quickly, she actually put her account into lockdown and kind of went into public hiding. So it's a good sign, actually. The public's had enough of that baloney being put at them. Even the band in Kamloops, for example, where this all began with the alleged 215 bodies of children buried outside of a residential school, they've switched to calling it anomalies because they understand that nobody has dug a hole 6 feet down to find out whether there's actually a body or not. The story, if you believe everything of it, of course it's horrifying. Could you imagine, a place entrusted with children with such abuses that hundreds of them were killed and surreptitiously buried in an apple orchard outside? It sounds like something out of a horror novel. And it should, because by all appearances, it's fiction. That's why it sounds so horrible. I mean, humans are capable of atrocities, sadly. We know that. But in the case of these residential schools, There's no proof of this whatsoever, and it's actually very easy proof to acquire. You just actually have to excavate. People don't realize perhaps that ground penetrating radar just shows ground disturbance. It can be anything. It could be tree roots, it could be septic tiles, and it could be a grave. There's only one way to find out. And the fact that after 4 years and being given $8 million to do so, the Kamloops band hasn't actually bothered digging a hole starts to bring it more into the category of hoax rather than event. Now we're seeing other bands doing the same thing and the legacy media feeding it. So this band just north of Vancouver has done ground penetrating radar surveys, and they've done a couple. Now they believe they have as many as 81, as it's been called, graves, but no excavations. The band is now refusing any communications with media, and I guess we're just supposed to take it at their word. And I imagine, I hate to say it, but the hands are probably going to be out for more money soon.
Yeah, well, the thing that bothers me is who can hold this media to account? Who is supposed to hold this media to account?
Well, and the public normally would, the old way of media. Hey, if you're not trustworthy, if you're putting out bad content, eventually your viewership will drop and you're just going to go broke. With the CBC, unfortunately, we're forced to fund it no matter how bad their coverage is. The viewership for the CBC is down to a pathetic level. I think the CBC Evening News is down to 3% market share or something like that, even though we're giving them $1.4 billion a year. But that accountability isn't there because the network prospers despite their poor coverage rather than facing the realities of it. So all I can suggest, I guess, for people wanting to hold them account is to keep pressuring your federal politicians and shop with your eyes and ears. Go to outlets that have been proving themselves to be trustworthy to you, and perhaps coming from a direction you value. But the free market gets stunted in every aspect, especially in media, when the government funds one aspect of it. And that's where we're seeing some of this wretched coverage from the CBC. So in answer to your question, I guess nothing's going to change it until we change governments. That might be a while.
Speaking of changing governments, we just had a by-election happen in Alberta, and also there's a lot of town halls going on. And I'm specifically referring to the Alberta Next in Edmonton, how feisty and fired up that one got, those conversations with the people. What is your assessment from the results of the by-election, kind of what happened? I've heard you speaking on maybe Albertans don't really care because that's a federal thing and they're more focused on, separating and becoming their own, sovereignty, their own country. What are your thoughts that has happened in Alberta the last few weeks? Where do you think we're going? What do you think the temperature is?
Yeah, well, I mean, the by-election got a lot of coverage because it was the leader of the opposition,
right,
parachuting in to get himself a seat to get in. The spin on it, I mean, they tried to make it sound competitive. Again, that's where they're trying to make the news. There's a story from the National Observer, I think it is, where they said his seat might be at risk in Alberta. He won with 80%. It was never a race, to be honest. So that kind of sideshow is finished with. They really tried to pump up that alternative candidate, Bonnie Kritchner, I believe it was, and she came in at under 10%. Pretty good for an independent, but it never even vaguely close to winning. Part of what I said in my video, though, was, the amount of impact it has on Albertans, as far as that goes, is pretty much none. It's a federal leader just getting a seat. Our federal voice really doesn't mean anything. It's nothing. There's a lot of great members of parliament that come out of Alberta, but they have to cater to Central Canada if they want to try to become a national party. That's just the reality. Alberta's situation of being as predictable as we are, we tend to be taken for granted by the Conservatives and the Liberals because they know we're not going to switch our votes. So the Liberals have nothing to lose here, nor do the Conservatives. So provincially, if we want to find things, we have to look at provincial means. And that's where the Alberta Next panel, Premier Smith has been hosting that and going around and talking. And as you said, there's been some pretty crazy footage coming out of there. Again, it shows the left. They don't respect freedom. They don't respect discourse. They just come in, they scream, they yell, they disrupt, and they try to shut down discourse rather than at least just coming in and rationally disagreeing with it. These meetings are going on regardless. To be fair, some of it sounds like, especially the way the Alberta Next thing was put on the internet, for the polling of people, it sounds like the provincial government's kind of looking to get answers to questions they already have answers for. They just want to reaffirm them. And they're a little bit leading with the way they're doing it. You know, you have to watch a video before being able to vote and things like that. I don't think that's doing themselves favors or giving legitimacy to the exercise. But there is a real serious and growing discontent in Alberta, frustration, a realization that, again, we can't achieve change on the federal front. So what can we do provincially? The Alberta Next thing is examining ways we could do within the federation, but it certainly is attracting the notice and support of a lot of people who've just said, I've had enough. They want out of the federation altogether. And it's a heated subject. So there's some heated meetings going on, but it's going to be interesting. We're at an impasse, and it depends on what Carney does in this next year with where Albertans are going to sit. Because if they feel that they're very upset, and there's already, we're looking at perhaps 30% of people saying that's enough, we want out of the federation. If we see any kind of thing that's perceived as an assault from the federal government on Alberta's sovereignty or well-being, I suspect we're going to get very close to that tipping point of an actual independence vote winning in this province. People are underestimating it.
Alan?
Yeah, I think they are underestimating it. You know, I think, you know, I mean, I've lived my entire life here in Alberta, and you know, we've been involved in the equalization payments. Well, basically, they were formed in 1957, and I think the first payment was 1960. But we've been paying equalization payments ever since, which says to the country, look, Alberta, you know, wants to be equal, and we understand that because of the blessedness that we have in our province, we have, you know, some money left over, so we'll share it with you. But then the reciprocal doesn't happen and has not happened all of these decades. And Alberta has tried. We've done the Reform Party. We've done the, you know, we've sent prime ministers from the West to be prime minister of the country. We've done everything we possibly can to, you know, be an equal partner in the Confederation of Canada, and it has not happened, and it will not happen. When Mr. Carney says we're going to have electric cars, everybody's going to be driving an electric car by 2030, I mean, that's ridiculous. But anyway, in this cold weather and everything else, we're all going to be using dog sleds again, you know? So, I mean, that's, you know, I mean, it's just, we've just had it. There's an ignorance about Western Canada that can no longer handle the stupidity, in my humble opinion. And I think my great-great-grandfather, who was a part of the homesteaders that came up here from Pennsylvania and homesteaded the land, they owned the mineral rights of the land and gave it to the province so that all people in the province could benefit. And there's no way that would I believe that my great-great-grandfather thought that money then would also be benefiting the rest of Canada. It was to benefit Alberta. So we're sending billions of money away, and we have billions of dollars in deficit in this province. There's something really wrong with this picture.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Albertans aren't harmless, heartless, I should say. You know, I think we'd feel if it was disaster relief, if it's a short-term thing happening to a neighboring province, we'd, you know, step up and help things out. But when you're talking a program that's now 60 years old and we've never been a recipient of it since 1962 or 63, I believe, this isn't a hand up, it's a handout, and it never stops. And then when you couple that with that lack of representation, with being grossly underrepresented in the Senate, with having virtually no voice in the House of Commons, and with, as I said, federal governments that will take us for granted policy-wise, this is a real recipe for discontent. This was never the intention, I think, of the Federation. It's turned into something else. As you said, your great-great-grandfather wouldn't have envisioned this. This wasn't what you entrust the government with the mineral rights for. And the other meetings that nobody's hearing about, we're hearing about the Alberta Next, and I wouldn't say nobody's hearing about, but the media is not reporting on, is the Alberta Prosperity Project, which is sort of the predominant independence advocacy group in Alberta. They've been holding town hall meetings almost 5 days a week, even through summer, and it's usually hard to draw people out. And they are packed at every one of them. These guys are working, they're organizing, and people are coming out. So whenever the referendum question may come, and it looks like it's going to come. I still don't believe we're at the point where enough people are ready to vote to leave, but we're moving towards it. This is part of that underestimation. There's a very large, organized group of Albertans getting together and ready to contest that referendum when the time comes, and it's going to be quite an exercise, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Well, Cory, we really appreciate everything you do and your perspective. Can you continue to bring forth truth and report the news like you have been? We'll definitely have you back.
Great, thanks. No, it's always great having a conversation with you guys. Well,
it's great having Cory on. It's nice. Western Standard's done some great work.
Yes, they are great people, and we appreciate them. You know, it's basically from the Alberta Report with Ted Byfield that started it long time ago. Right. And when I was trying to start up Christian schools way back in 1979, you know, Ted Byfield would always write about what's going on. And he even came and spoke at our banquets. So it's kind of like a continuation of the legacy of Ted Byfield, which is really exciting to see.
Yeah. Well, I know you had something you wanted to share, Alan, and you didn't get it in at the beginning. I'm going to go ahead and let you share it now.
Yeah, well, Scripture
says the fire, Pastor. Go for it. Go
okay. Well, in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 15, and I've been looking at Deuteronomy here, it said, "The Lord was devoted to your fathers and loved them. He chose their descendants after them. He chose you out of all the peoples as it is today. So the God who owns heaven and earth also sets his love on people. He chose us, not because of our greatness, but because of his love and his faithfulness." And Jesus echoed this when he told his disciples, "You did not choose me, but I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce fruit, and fruit that shall remain." The creator of all things has chosen you to belong to him. His love is not distant or general. It is personal and specific. Today, remember, the God who owns the heavens and the earth has set his love on you and chosen you in Christ. Live as one who belongs to him, bearing fruit that will last.
You want to help support our mission, keep this conversation on the air? We are viewer supported. You can go to our website, gotalktruth.com, click on donate. Many different ways to give digitally. If you'd like to give through the mail, you can. You can make your gift payable to Heritage Christian Ministries Association and send it to 246 Stewart Green, Southwest Suite 3260, Calgary, Alberta, T3H3C8. If you'd like prayer, you can call our toll-free line, 1-800-915-0056. All right, Dad, we're out of time. We'll see you guys later.
Love you.